What's going on, Duolingo English test takers? We're going to look at 1 hour of speaking samples. What are these speaking samples? So they are for 3 questions. The read and speak, listen and speak about the photo questions. All 3 of these questions have to do with your production score, and you have to speak for at least 30 seconds for all of these. So these are the questions where you have to speak the longest. The speaking samples you're going to listen to are from real Duolingo English test takers. I'll put a link in the description to where you can find these questions, and you can actually practice them and record your response as well. I know you're excited to hear the samples, so let's listen in right now. If you have any questions or comments, comment below. Please don't forget to subscribe. Be very helpful. But that's it. Good luck, guys. What's going on, Duolingo English test takers? Welcome back. My name is Josh. Here we are talking about read and speak questions, and we're going to look at a student sample where they have a little bit of trouble with vocabulary. And so the question that we're trying to answer today is, how can I expand my vocabulary? What can you do to practice at home and improve your vocabulary, even if you don't have a teacher? So let's talk about that right now. This is the question we're going to look at. Compare your best teacher and worst teacher. What ways are they similar? What ways are they different? It's pretty simple. On test day, you'll just have 20 seconds to prepare, and you have to speak for between 30 to 90 seconds. And we're going to look at this student's vocabulary. That's what we're going to focus on for this particular student, and think of ways of how the student can improve their vocabulary. So let's listen, and let's listen to this sample and see how they do. Okay, here we go.
My best teacher, she was my math teacher. I liked her a lot because she explained very clearly. She used colors, the markers. She used a lot of colors, so it was easier for me to understand. And also, she put a lot of homework. In that way, we can practice a lot. I think that she was one of my best teachers. The other teacher that I think that I didn't like it and was the worst was my music teacher. He didn't care at all. She left us to do whatever we wanted to do. But at the end, I think that is not good because we didn't learn what we meant to learn at this moment. So I think that a good teacher is not a teacher that let you do everything you want. The teacher that teach you what they are taught to teach you. So that's it.
Okay, so she did a good job. She spoke for a good amount of time. She spoke for about 75 seconds, and I thought she did pretty well. You know, there's some things that she can work on, but we're going to focus on vocabulary for this particular lesson. And remember, when you're practicing at home, I really want you to focus on just one thing to do better today. You know, you might hear, your pronunciation has problems, your speed has problems, you're not confident and you need more vocabulary. You might find a lot of things that you want to do better. That's okay, but really when you're practicing, and this is a thing that you do every day, just focus on one thing that you want to do better today and try to work on it tomorrow. One thing. That's it. That's the big thing I want you to learn from all of these videos, is that focus on one thing at a time. When I show her score, and when you look at your score on my speaking score on any other site, focus on one thing. Focus on one thing that you want to do better. Okay, so for her, we're going to look at vocabulary right now. And she says teacher a lot, especially at the end. I think she's kind of getting nervous and she doesn't know what to say, so she keeps saying the same thing. Now, how can she avoid this? Well, first of all, let me shout out my speaking score. It definitely helped me give this feedback to the student. Designed for TOEFL, but this artificial intelligence also works for the Duolingo English test. And her vocabulary depth score was very low. It was 7 out of 100. Now, I talked in other videos about giving an example. I think that's a great way to expand your vocabulary, but I'm going to show you another thing that you can do to help expand your vocabulary, and so let's talk about it. So the question again is, how can you add more vocabulary to your responses? How can you expand? Something I've talked about in other videos is about giving personal examples, but for this video, I'm going to talk about borrowing from the examples of others. Now, how does that work? Well, that's actually what we do at speakerenglish.com. I'm going to give a quick shout out here for the Duolingo English Test Speaking Plan. You have everything laid out for you for up to 90 days of practice, but all you need is 30 for guaranteed improvement. Basically, we do what we're going to do together right now, is that you have one question to answer every day, you write a transcript for your answer, and you analyze it and you compare it to an example response. So every day you go through this process, takes about 15 minutes, and this is guaranteed to improve your score. Check it out at speakerenglish.com. But let's do this example together. So this is a transcript of my own response. So as you can see, I made it pretty long. I try to give longer responses to give students a lot of good information, English, vocabulary, phrases. So it's pretty long here. I don't want you to worry too much about this. I'm going to shorten it up a bit, and we're just going to look at the first part. So this is what you should do. Again, we're thinking about the question, how can I expand my vocabulary? How can you expand your vocabulary? Well, after you answer a question and you try your best, look at somebody else's example and see what they said. And borrow some words, borrow some phrases, borrow some ideas from their own response. So here's my own response here, and I highlighted some things that she wanted to borrow. For example, well, to be honest, she wants to try to use that next time she speaks. Stands out in my mind, which is something, it's like a way of saying something that I think about, something I remember, something that comes to mind is another way to say that. She never took attendance, so she remembers that from her own teacher, and she wants to use that in her response. And the phrase, people would just. People would just, she's like, okay, I can imagine saying that in my own response. I'm going to try to use it in mine. So this is what she should do. She should do the same. She should look at her transcript, write in the phrases that she wants to use. So actually just write it in. Don't have to speak naturally. Just type it or write it in. And she includes it in her own response. So this is how her response looks now. Well, to be honest, the best teacher who stands out in my mind is my math teacher from high school. I like her a lot. She used colors. She put a lot of homework in that so we can practice a lot. I think that she's one of the best teachers I've ever had. The other instructor, so there's a word that she can use that I think that I didn't like, was my music teacher. She never took attendance and did not care at all. Okay, so you can see, take a few phrases, take a few words from the example response, and then put it in your own transcript and just read it aloud. That's it. That's what you should do. Just read this aloud. She should rewrite her response, adding a couple phrases, adding a couple words, changing some things, and then just read it aloud. That's it. Don't worry about trying to speak naturally. Don't try to, say it, like you've been using these phrases for years. Just read it, read the transcript, say it aloud, and then tomorrow, your goal should be to use 2 or 3 of these phrases in your response naturally. So that's the process, basically. So let me just lay it out again. How to expand your vocabulary. You give a response and you have a transcript. You look at somebody else's response, and a good response and a good transcript, and you see a couple of phrases, a couple of words that you like, and you pick from them. Okay, a couple here, 2, 3, 4, and you add them to your own response. You rewrite your response, just take your time, type it out or rewrite it or whatever. Add a couple words, add a couple phrases that you like, okay, just a couple, and then read it aloud. That's it, just read it aloud. Tomorrow, do the same response again, or do another response, but try to use those 2 or 3 phrases in your speaking. And you just follow that process. Now, will this magically expand your vocabulary by thousands of words and phrases overnight? No. It'll help you learn a couple of new things to say every day. And you'll get used to it. Try to find ways to use it every day. It's just a short, small process, but it's a habit that you do every day, and that's how you improve, just doing little things every day. So I hope you found that helpful. If you need another way to expand your vocabulary, I'm going to link to this video here about telling a better story. So that'll help you give an example, and that's another way to expand your vocabulary. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Here we are talking about the read then speak questions for the Duolingo English test. And in this edition, we're going to look at a speaking sample and we're going to try to answer this question. What's one of the biggest reasons why test takers can improve their speaking score? So you're going to learn about that right now by the end of this video. We're going to look at this question for read then speak. It's compare your best teacher and your worst teacher. In what ways are they similar and in what ways are they different? So it's pretty simple for read then speak. You have to read the question, you have 20 seconds to prepare, and then you have to speak for 30 to 90 seconds. And this is the grading criteria for the Duolingo English test. And for this student, we're going to talk a lot about his vocabulary and grammar and how his language use score is going to be a little bit on the low side, and that's because of this mistake that he's making. So let's listen to the example first, and then we'll talk about it after. All right, here we go. Let's listen in.
My best teacher is my mathematics teacher. He's this type of person that tends to see how a knowledge, what he teaches, tends to be impacted into the students' knowledge. He tends to give his best. He is very, very down to earth. Well, and when he teaches, he's very, very understandable, self-explanatory, and makes even what is tend to be difficult in mathematics to be more simpler in what he's teaching. But my worst teacher is my literature teacher. She is the opposite of my math teacher because of she does not even tend to look at if the student or observe if the student is understanding what she's teaching or not. All she comes to do is to just chew gum and even not to pass the information of what she wants to teach to a level where the student will understand what she is teaching. So they are definitely the way they do things are very differently, and that is why I always love to work with my math teacher anytime, any day, because he is more like a father figure and tends to make you understand that there is nothing difficult in studying knowing mathematics, but
Okay, so that's his entire transcript. It looks something like this. Now you'll notice that what the transcript said and what he said is a bit different. There's some things that he tried to say that the transcript said differently. That's okay. And there's other, there's a couple different weaknesses the student has, but his fluency is very good. His vocabulary is very good. Sounds a little bit nervous. I think he needs to get used to this type of style of practicing. But what I did with this student's example is I put it in my speaking score. So this is designed for TOEFL speaking. It's an artificial intelligence called SpeechRater. You can check that website out. It's pretty helpful. His score actually was pretty good. I was a little bit surprised by how well he did, and I think that had to do with his speed. He could say a lot of words in a short amount of time. But one weakness that I want to focus on for this lesson is his vocabulary diversity. So that scored a 31 out of 100. So he didn't have a lot of different vocabulary. Now, why is that? What happened? So his response sounded like a list. So your response should not sound like a list. If you look here, I'll just read a couple of the first sentences. My best teacher is my mathematics teacher. He's the type of person that tends to see how knowledge of what he teaches impacts the students. He tends to give his best. He's very down to earth. When he teaches, he's very understandable. So you can hear it when I'm speaking. He does this, he does this, he does this, he does this. It sounds like a list. And when you just kind of list out qualities like he's doing here, my teacher is great, my teacher is awesome, my teacher is helpful, my teacher is understanding, my teacher is smart, and so on. It doesn't sound, first of all, you can't expand your vocabulary that way. He needs to make this sound more like a story. So that's what you should try to do when you're giving your speaking response, is to include a story to help expand your vocabulary. A story helps expand your vocabulary because you are not just listing out qualities. You have to tell a story, and a story has different people, different events, different objects, so you automatically use different vocabulary through a story. Now, how do you tell a story? Well, you first have a beginning that you set up the situation, you have a middle with details, what happened, and then at the end you say the lesson that you learned, or why this is an example that helps answer the question. And I'll show you an example right now, basically. So, by the way, this is the big mistake. So we talked about in the beginning of this, what's one of the biggest mistakes students make? It's that they don't have a personal example when they give their response. So when you don't have an example, it's hard to expand your answer. It's hard to show a lot of vocabulary. It's hard to show a lot of grammar. So here's the example. Let me show you. So here's the beginning. Here's the setup. This is exactly what the student said. My best teacher is my math teacher. He's the type of person that tends to see how knowledge of what he teaches impacts the student. Of course, there's some grammar mistakes, but we're just focusing on the story right now. Okay, now what happened? I'll never forget when one of my classmates, Chris, showed up late for our statistics class a week before the big final exam. My math teacher, Mr. Okubo, made him stay after class and complete all the assignments he had missed. Okay, so I'm just making up this story. I don't know if this is the student, this is probably not the student's story, but this is just something I made up. So I'm saying what happened to help explain my best teacher and why he's my best teacher. I'm giving a specific example. And then I show how this example helps support my opinion that he's the best teacher. He showed in that moment that he didn't just care about his job, but about the well-being of his students. I'm sure Chris wouldn't have passed without his extra support. Okay? And that's it. That's how you set up a story. Now there's another thing you should know about stories, and I'll get to that in 1 minute, but before I do, speakerenglish.com, check out our Duolingo English test speaking plan, where you have practice every day. So you don't have to worry about what should I do, how can I improve my speaking, what should I be practicing every day. All of that is answered for you and done for you in our Duolingo English test speaking plan, and it's guaranteed to improve your score in 30 days. So you have nothing to lose. Check it out, speakerenglish.com. Now, again, just to recap, the beginning of your story is you set up the situation. The middle, you talk about what happened, and in the end, you show your lesson learned. So what I would tell this student is that, okay, good job, you did great work. Let's do the same response again, but let's try to make it more like a story so we can expand your vocabulary and expand your grammar a bit. There's other things that he could work on with his confidence and some of his pronunciation, but the easiest thing right now is to start telling some stories. So that's what we're going to do first. But he might have to start thinking about details, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the next video. Check that out here, where this student has a little bit of problem with adding details, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video. All right, so check that out. I'll see you there, and thanks for watching. What's going on, Duolingo English test takers? That's very long. I hope we can start saying DET pretty soon, because Duolingo English test is really long to say, but we're here talking about the read then speak questions. We're going to look at an example, and we want to look at the student sample and answer this question: what do you do when your responses are too short? So I actually want you to think about what her weaknesses are, but one big one is that her answer is too short. We'll listen together and we'll talk about it after this. This is the question she's going to be answering, is compare your best teacher and your worst teacher. What ways are they similar? What ways are they different? Pretty simple question, right? And the focus here is going to be on how well you answer the question that was asked. So she had a little bit of trouble with content and structure. So we have to look at that a bit and see how it can improve, how we can make it better. All right, so let's listen into her sample response, and here we go.
Thinking back in overtime, I could say my best teacher was the one who taught us history. She was really nice with us. She always cared about us and if we learn. She always asked us if we understand the topic. My worst teacher, I could say, He was the one who taught us science. She was really impatient and she always yelled at us, even if we didn't do anything wrong.
Okay, so this is her whole response. One thing that you'll notice is that it's pretty short. It should be 30 to 90 seconds. She spoke for 35 seconds, but you want to try to get this up to at least 60 seconds on test day. And, one thing I'll say about this student is that I think her fluency is pretty good. Her pronunciation is good. She sounds comfortable. She sounds confident. It's just that she doesn't know how to really answer a question for Duolingo. So for this test, you have to answer a certain way. So she's got to show more in her response. Even though it was a pretty short response, I ran it through my speaking score. This is for TOEFL, but it also works for Duolingo. It gives you great feedback on your speaking, and so check that out. So her speaking rate, she got a kind of low score, and it really wasn't because she spoke slow, it was because she just had a short answer, and she wasn't really able to give a lot of details and show that she has a lot of vocabulary. So this is something that I talked about in the last video about, you need a better story. I'll put a link to that somewhere here, where your response should not sound like a list. It should sound more like a story. So when you're speaking, it should sound like a story, not like a list. So when she's talking about her best teacher, my best teacher was the one who taught us history. She was really nice. She always cared about us. She always asked us if we understood the topic. So she did this, she did this, she did this, she did this. When you give this kind of response, it's hard to know what to say next, because if I ask you in everyday life, who's your best teacher? You say, oh, my best teacher was my college history teacher, Mr. Evans. He was really nice, and he made the topic very interesting for everyone, even people who didn't like history. That's it. That's actually a kind of long answer to that question in everyday life. Usually these questions take just 10 seconds to answer. Who's your worst teacher? Oh, Mrs. Mintz, my 4th grade elementary school teacher. She was awful. She was really mean and scared me. That's it. I don't really have to say a whole lot in everyday life to this question, right? But on the test, you have to kind of expand your answer and give a longer response and show that you have a lot of vocabulary, show that you know a lot of different types of grammar. So you have to get used to answering like a test. And to do that with this example, we want to make it sound more like a story. And we talked about this in the last video, giving a personal example. You want to have a beginning and a middle and an end. And I gave the example here where this is from another student that said, my best teacher is my math teacher. I'll never forget when one of my classmates, Chris, showed up late for our statistics class. My math teacher, Mr. Okubo, made him stay after class and complete all the assignments he had missed. So this is just an example of a story with a beginning and a middle and an end. And it takes time to say. So that's what you want to do. You want to tell a story. Now, how does that help you when your answers are too short? Remember, that's the question that we're answering here. What do you do when your responses are too short? Well, you tell a story, and you also tell a story with a lot of details, with specific details. Now, what do I mean here? Look at this story again, and look at how I added names. Chris, Mr. Okubo. Look at how I added a specific class. I didn't just say math class, I said statistics class. I didn't just say test, I said my final exam. Be specific. Give names. Give details about things that, maybe I'm not going to get any points for saying Mr. Okubo, okay? Because that's a name. It's not in the English language, it's not a word, so it's not going to give me a better vocabulary score. But it is going to help me tell a better story. Because when you give these details, more details come into your mind, and the story comes to life. Let me give you an example. If I told the story without saying names, okay? If I said, when I was in high school, I had a math teacher, and he made the class very interesting. There was a student who failed the exam, and he worked really hard with the teacher to help him pass the exam, and the student finally passed the exam, so my teacher helped him a lot. Now you hear how boring that is. You hear I have to say student, teacher over and over and over again, right? Give names, give specifics. They help you. They help you tell a better story. They help make it more interesting to listen to, and they will help you improve your vocabulary and make your answer longer. So make sure you do that. And you could practice that every day at Speaker English. Check out the Duolingo English Test Speaking Plan, where we give you practice every day. It takes less than 20 minutes a day to finish, and it's guaranteed to improve your score in 30 days. You see sample responses just like this one. You see samples from a teacher. You hear audio. You have practice. Everything's included there. You don't have to worry about preparing for the Duolingo English Test speaking section because everything is laid out in the study plan. Check it out at speakerenglish.com. Now, what is my advice for this student? So, she should do the same response again, but this time add one story about your best teacher and add another about your worst teacher. And let's see how long you speak for. Let's see if we can improve your score on my speaking score. Now, I mentioned this video already, but maybe you missed it, so I'm gonna put a link to it right here or somewhere around here. It's to tell a better story. So that's the example of a student who needed some help to tell a better story to give an example. So if you wanna check that out, check that one out here. I'll also link to another video here where a student, I give her a very useful exercise to expand your vocabulary. Okay, so that's another one that you can check out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in one of these videos somewhere. All right, take care. What's going on, Duolingo English test takers? Welcome to this edition of Speaking Samples. We're going to look at a listen then speak question, and the student sample that we're going to listen to is going to have some trouble with confidence. And what does that sound like? What does that sound like when you don't have a lot of confidence? Well, you're going to hear this example right now, and you can see if this might be a problem for you as well. And we're also going to answer this question at the end: how do you improve your confidence? So that's what we're going to talk about together right now through this student sample. On test day, you listen to an audio, and it's going to be a short question, and you can play it twice, and then you have 20 seconds to prepare, and you have to speak for at least 30 seconds. Just to save time, I'm just going to tell you what the question is instead of listening to it. Describe a time when you had to complete a project with a group of people. Did it improve the quality of work or hurt it? Okay, so that's it. That's what you have to answer, and that's what this student answers. For this student in particular, we're going to talk about confidence. So there's no grading criteria like confidence, right? But it can hurt almost any aspect of your score: your vocabulary, your grammar, your delivery, your pronunciation, or your content and structure. So it can, hurt everything.
So last year we had this project in my class. Our teacher gave us a project, so we had to do it with a group. But if I know we wouldn't do it if it was individual. If it was individual work to do, it would be very hard. But it was group work. So it improved the way of us being it improved the way we all just it improved the way that we all can communicate and try to understand the other's idea and hear their idea or share new things. So we got I got lots of experience last year because if I know I would fail if I do it alone, but it was group work. So I've gained so many experience, new things. I also learn how to communicate, how to share your idea with people. I also gained confidence. So it really helped a lot, and yeah, it makes you more to be confident.
Okay, so pretty good response, right? This is her whole response laid out here. Her fluency is pretty good. She sounds pretty much like a native speaker to me. I think that, she can speak English every day, feel very comfortable and confident doing it. But for the Duolingo English test, there's some things that are missing, and she's not used to answering this type of question. At least that's how it sounds to me. And part of the reason why it sounds like that is because she has a lot of so, like, so, these are natural, but she could really reduce these a lot. And we'll talk about that through confidence. I put this example through my speaking score. Check that website out. It gives you a grade based on SpeechRater, which is the ETS's TOEFL grading criteria. Not the same as Duolingo. We don't know about Duolingo's artificial intelligence software, but we do know that they rely on their scores through comparing them to other tests like TOEFL and IELTS. So on the TOEFL, this score would score 40 out of 100 on repetition. That's repeating the same word again, very close to the same word. So that's what repetition is. So like, but if we like, if you say words close together, then that kind of hurts your repetition score. It means that you have to think too much. Now, here's the confidence killer, is that nothing kills your confidence more than a lack of preparation. So it's not that sometimes you might feel, not confident because of your vocabulary or your level or whatever it is, but the one confidence kind of killer that you're in control of is how much you prepare. The more you prepare for this test, the more you practice with different speaking questions, the more your confidence will improve. It's just a fact. It's just very simple. The more time you put into something, the more confident you feel. Imagine your first day of work compared to your 300th day of work. Your first day of work, well, you'll have a lot less confidence because you don't know things. It's new. Same thing with this test. I feel like the student just needs to practice more with Duolingo English test like practice materials, and she'll get a better score, her confidence will increase, and she won't have so many of these uhs or ums. But I actually want to give her more practical advice. There's something very specific she can do to reduce those vocal fillers. She should memorize a few discourse markers. So what are discourse markers? Well, they're also called transition words and phrases. These are words like, in my opinion, for example, to start, in conclusion, in the end, to sum up. These are all different examples of discourse markers. I call them transition words just to make it easier for students. There's a couple benefits to using them. First of all, they help you know how to start. So nowadays, most people agree that. She can say that every time. Nowadays, most people agree that. Nowadays, most people agree that. Much better than starting with, so like, it is better. No. Start strong. Have a phrase that you're going to use every time, no matter what. Nowadays, most people agree that. Nowadays, most people feel that. Nowadays, most people think that. Anything like that is fine. Just start strong. Very simple. It also helps you to introduce points and examples. So, first of all, secondly, for example, I remember one, I once heard about, which is why. These are all phrases you can use to begin your examples or to transition to a new idea. Now look, these phrases are replacing these vocal fillers. Instead of saying, so, like, you're going to use a vocal filler instead. You're going to use a transition word instead. Nowadays, most people agree that it is better to work with a group than with a partner. I still remember last year we had this project. So you're going to use these discourse markers instead of vocal fillers. Instead of saying, so, like, use a discourse marker. I still remember one. For example, secondly, first of all, something like that. It also helps easily transition to a conclusion. I still remember last year we had this project in my class. Our teacher gave us a project, so like we had to do it with a group. In the end, I realized that if it were individual work to do, it would be very hard, but it was group work. In the end, I still remember. Nowadays, you see how her confidence is improving? Her discourse markers are helping her reduce the amount of vocal fillers and will help her score overall. This is what we do at speakerenglish.com. I'm going to do a quick promo here, but I stick around to the end because I want to show you another example of this. But At speakerenglish.com, we have Duolingo English test speaking plans. Read and speak, listen and speak about the photo. Every day you do one example question, you write a transcript, you look at the example of another person, usually me or another teacher, and you see their transcript, and you can compare it, and you could find more discourse markers. You can learn how to reduce your vocal fillers. It takes less than 15 minutes a day, or less than 20 minutes, about 15 minutes a day, less than 20 minutes a day, and it's guaranteed to improve your score in 30 days. Check it out, speakerenglish.com, our Duolingo English test speaking plan. So, this is what you should do. You should do the same response again and include at least 2 discourse markers and less than 5 vocal fillers. So basically, answer the question again, don't read your transcript, try to answer it naturally, and try to use, let's say, 2 discourse markers. Let's say, nowadays, most people agree that, and I still remember one. Okay, these phrases. So let's use those 2 phrases, and let's try to say or like less than 5 times. Okay, here we go. Start. Now, again, her response is really strong. You know, if she just wants to get a 120, 130, she might not need to go through this whole process. She just needs to tweak a few things because her level is really good. But if she wants to get the highest score possible, she should go through this process and do it for a couple days. All right, but that's it. Next up, I'm going to talk about problems preparing at home. This video here, there's something that you need to be really careful about when you're practicing speaking for the Duolingo English test on your own. Make sure you don't make this mistake. Check that out, and I'll see you there. All right, take care, everybody. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Here we are talking about the Duolingo English test, listen and speak questions. And this whole speaking sample series is for you. You're practicing at home on your own. You're not sure what to do to help you improve. This is what this is all about, to help you understand how to practice your speaking on your own. And this video is crucial because I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes students make when they're preparing at home. So what is it? Well, we're going to listen to a sample of a really good response, but I think he's making a really big mistake, and let's listen to it. This is for a listen and speak question. You know, you don't see the question. You have to just listen to it twice. It's usually pretty short, and then you have 20 seconds to prepare. The question here is, describe a time you had to complete a project with a group. Did it improve the quality of work, or did it hurt the quality of work? So that's what you have to answer, and that's what this student is going to answer right now. Now, this thing that he's going to do, this mistake he's going to make, is going to affect all of these categories. So it's not just your vocabulary or your grammar or your pronunciation, delivery, or structure. It's everything. It's going to affect everything that you do on test day. So let's listen to his example and let's learn from his mistake. I think he's making this mistake. Let's see. Let's talk about it after.
Recently, my school had a student-led project that involved students working in groups in a topic of their choice. Teachers didn't have to do anything. Their only work was to supervise that we were actually working. My group was me and 3 other of my classmates, including one of I don't get along very well. She can be sometimes a little bit bossy or too perfectionist, which can bother me a lot sometimes because it makes me feel like the work I was doing was not enough for her, and she made me feel bad sometimes. But at the end of the day, we got along really well, better than what I expected, and we ended up turning in a work that I am really proud of. I think we got an excellent score, and I look forward to working with her in the future.
Okay, so this is his whole response written out. It's about a minute long. The length is good. You know, and the score is good. I mean, I ran it through my speaking score, which is the TOEFL artificial intelligence, the speech rater, and he got an 80 out of 100 on speaking rate. And his overall score was what would probably be something like a 130 on the Duolingo English test. So he did really good. What's the problem? What problem do I have with this? Well, be careful preparing outside of the test conditions. Now, what do I mean? Now, I could be totally wrong about this. I don't know the student. He just submitted his speaking. I didn't, see what he was doing. But I think that he recorded this multiple times. That he maybe even wrote everything out first and then spoke it aloud. So in other words, he didn't follow the test conditions. He didn't just listen twice, think for 20 seconds in his head and then speak naturally. Because he didn't have these uhs or ums. He didn't have the vocal fillers. Everything was very clear and very confidently spoken. It sounded like something that was rehearsed, that he tried to do multiple times over and over again. I could be wrong, but that's what it sounds like. So now, is this a problem? Well, yes and no. It's a problem when you prepare this way. Let's say you give yourself 5 minutes to prepare your answer. You do it multiple times. And then on test day, you're surprised that you don't get a good score because you haven't prepared like the test. That's when it's a problem. When you think that you're going to get a better score than you actually will because you're not following the same rules as the test. So that's when it's a problem. And this is something that a lot of students do actually. They're in their house, it's very comfortable. They take their time answering questions. They just try to improve their confidence, which is great. But on test day, they haven't prepared like the test. So then when the test comes and they have to answer in 20 seconds and they can't write any notes and they only have one chance, it becomes a problem. So I'm actually going to show you the situations where you want to practice this way, where you want to practice not like the test, and then when you should practice like the test. So I'm going to explain that right now, but before I do, speakerenglish.com. I have to give a promotion here because this is what we do there. So if you're having trouble practicing at home, everything is laid out for you in the Duolingo English Test Speaking Practice Plan. It's guaranteed to improve your score in 30 days. Everything is set up for you. You don't have to worry about what to do every day. Everything is there. There's also tips and tricks and strategy, everything you need for the Duolingo English Test speaking parts. Read and speak, listen and speak about the photo. Everything is there. So check that out, speakerenglish.com. But let me get back to practicing at home. This is the first situation where you should practice not like the test, where you want to do what he did, basically, is when you start preparing. When you start preparing for the Duolingo English Test, you're getting used to the test, you're getting used to the questions, you're getting used to, how to answer. So just take your time, don't get too stressed about answering in 20 seconds or only listening twice to the listen and speak question. Just, chill out a bit and just focus on giving good answers. Another thing is that when you're practicing with a template or you're practicing with a structure, for other videos, I've talked about using a template, using discourse markers, like for example, in my opinion, speak about the photo, I talk about different ways to answer that question. And when you're trying to get used to that, getting used to the structure, what to say first, what to say second, what to say third, take your time, just get used to that structure so you don't worry about the test conditions that much in that situation. Also, you might feel like your speaking isn't good enough. Maybe the student feels like his confidence isn't good enough or his speaking ability isn't good enough. So if you're more of a long-term student where you know that your speaking needs a bit more work, then yeah, don't worry about the test conditions so much. You're not going to take the test for like 3 months or 6 months. Okay, relax, work on your fluency, try to improve your pronunciation, improve your speaking, improve your confidence, and then, worry about the test conditions later. And that's the last part too, is when you're trying to build confidence. When you feel really nervous about this test, you really don't like answering questions in like 20 seconds. It makes you feel strange and you want to build your confidence. Okay, so just relax. Don't follow the test conditions so much. Try to get your confidence up and then gradually try to get closer. So, you only have 20 seconds to prepare. Give yourself 1 minute to prepare. And then next week, try 45 seconds. And then next week, try 30 seconds. Okay? And so on and so on. But when you get closer to test day, that's when it's really important to try to follow the test conditions, because that will help you improve your confidence. Copying the test conditions will help you assess your current level and improve your confidence on test day. In fact, I even recommend students give themselves less time to prepare. because I want them to be even more stressed on your own when it's not the test. So then when it's actually time to take the test, you feel confident no matter what happens, you'll be totally fine. Okay, so that's what I would recommend. Copy the test conditions, especially when you get closer to the test. Okay, so that's it pretty much. That's what I wanted to say about how to practice at home. But there's also something that you should do besides copy the test conditions, which is some people have trouble with their speed. In other words, when you're speaking and giving your answer, you speak a bit slowly because maybe you're nervous, maybe you're not used to the test, maybe you don't know how to answer that question. So I talk about all that in this next video here, how to improve your speaking speed for listen and speak questions. Okay, so for this particular question type. So check that out, and thanks for watching. I'll see you there. What's going on, Duolingo English test takers? Welcome to this video about listen and speak questions. And this is a good one because a lot of people have, everyone has a different weakness when it comes to, speaking and preparing for this test. This one comes up really often, is speaking speed. So what should you do if you feel like you're speaking too slowly? So we're going to answer that question by the end of this. We're also going to talk about how many words you should say per minute and what type of exercise, what type of practice you should be doing at home to improve your speaking speed. So let's do that right now. Here we go. So we're going to look at this question. It's a listen and speak question. You get to replay it twice on test day. I'm just going to show you what the question is here. Describe a time you had to complete a project. Did it improve the quality of work or hurt it? And for this particular example, we're going to talk about the grading criteria, delivery, how you speak. So this is about how much you can say or write in a limited amount of time. So that's the issue that the student's going to have.
Recently, I had a project with my colleagues. The project was to build a beautiful as beautiful the a beautiful prototype of a factory for kids in school. I done lots of the work, but my colleagues, they were very lazy. They didn't participate in the project very good. They went, so I worked a lot on that project. I built a model of the factory out of boxes and woods, and also the popsicle sticks. Overall, working on a project is a good experience, but the last time when I worked in the project, I got unlucky and it wasn't satisfying to me.
Okay, so that was her response. And, there were some issues that are pretty simple to kind of see. Like, for example, she said beautiful a lot in the beginning. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. She kept repeating herself because she wasn't sure what she wanted to say. She was thinking, and that happens sometimes. I put her response through my speaking score. It's designed for TOEFL, but you can also use it for the Duolingo English test as well to learn some of your strengths and weaknesses. And one weakness that I want to talk about here is speaking rate for the student. She scored a 20 out of 100 here. So this is, to me, her biggest weakness. It's also something kind of hard to do better. Usually when I give students advice, one of the first things I'll give them advice on is their structure. And actually, I thought her structure was pretty good. She knew to answer the question, she knew to give an example, and she gave an example of something she did with students to make something with popsicle sticks. And so it was good. So I have to move on. So after, okay, your structure is okay, you know how to answer the question. Next thing we have to talk about is how you speak, your delivery. And that gets tricky. So let's talk about how to improve your speaking speed. Now, what is a good speaking speed? Well, I recommend at least 140 words per minute. Her response was 115 words per minute. To be honest, on that My Speaking Score site, they actually say you should speak 170 words per minute or more. That's pretty high. I would say that you can, and I don't want you to just start speaking really fast, to try to get all those words. That's not the point. But I think 140, 150 is a good goal to have for most students, is to get to at least 140, 150 words per minute. You don't have to get to that 170 mark. But yeah, so that's what you want. And so this student, she's speaking a bit too slowly. Now, what can she do? How can she improve her speaking speed? So let's talk about it. The first thing she should do is read the same response again aloud and at least 5 seconds faster. So in other words, she has the transcript, so that's a big thing. You want to write out your transcript or use a software that makes it automatically, and you read it aloud. That's it. You just read this aloud and you try to speak faster than you did before. Now, when I say try to speak faster, it doesn't mean, let me give an example with the student's transcript here. Recently I had a project with my colleagues where the project was to build a beautiful prototype of the fast for kids. That doesn't mean try to speak fast like that. When I say speak faster, what do I mean? I mean that you want to try to bring words together. Okay? That was kind of her problem, was that she said, recently I had a project with my colleagues. So she didn't really bring the words together. She kind of said each word individually. So she's got to try to bring words together. So this is what speaking faster looks like. Recently I had a project with my colleagues. Recently I had a project. Recently I had a project. Recently I had a project. With my colleagues, with my colleagues, with my colleagues. Bringing words together. That's what that means. And it means pausing at the right time. Taking a breath at the right time. Now, how do you know when to take a breath? Well, that's the second thing you should do. Find an example response to shadow. So find an example of somebody answering the same question and copy how they speak. So that's what we do at Speaker English. Basically, every day you have a question and a sample response, and you can do a lot of things with the sample response, but one thing you can do is shadow. So this is my own response here to this question, and I'm going to just read the first sentence. This is an interesting question. She pauses that and then repeats the same way that I said it. Not, this is an interesting question. 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 I remember about 20 years ago now. She wants to try to bring these words together and pause at the right time. Now, is this going to magically improve her speaking tomorrow? No, it's a process. This is what she needs to work on right now. This, to me, from this one response, is her biggest weakness, is her speed, and it's because she's not bringing words together. She knows about the question. I can tell she's probably practiced these types of questions before. She knows about the structure. Now she has some mechanics that she needs to work on, some speed things that she needs to work on. So that's what you can do at speakerenglish.com. I'm going to recommend something else for her in 1 minute, but before I do, listen up, speakerenglish.com, Duolingo English Test Speaking Plans, guaranteed to improve your score in 30 days. Just like this, we look at one response every day, you answer it, you write a transcript, and you compare it to another response just like mine, and you can do things like shadow, vocabulary, grammar, and you can work on your weaknesses. Check it out, speakerenglish.com. But for this student, she also had some trouble with vocabulary. I have a video here from the Read and Speak question about how to expand your vocabulary and how to work on that at home. Check that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there. All right, take care. What's going on, everybody? We're going to talk about the Speak About the Photo question for the Duolingo English test. Now, on this test, the speaking, you probably know about the question types. You might have practiced a few, but you're still not sure, am I doing this right? What score would I get? How do I know my weaknesses? So that's our goal together for this series of videos about looking at student samples to learn more about how to practice and how to improve your score. So let's look at this sample right now of a student who did really well, but she made one little mistake that could cost her big and could be costing you big on test day. Let's look at it right now. We're going to look at this question here. This is the speak about the photo question. She's going to talk about this photo. And when we're talking about the Duolingo English test, there are 6 or 7 grading criteria. We're going to focus for this student on her pronunciation and pace. It's the part on the bottom there, delivery. We're going to focus on her delivery. What's wrong with her pronunciation and pace? I want you to think about that while you're listening. So here we go.
The picture shows a group of teachers and students who are at the woods, probably for a school trip. There's a man on the right trying to explain something to the kids, while the kids are focused with him wearing colorful goggles. There are also 2 teachers who are probably enjoying the trip as they are concentrating with the old man and having a smile on their face. It seems like a fun school trip with lots of fun activities. The kids seems to be having a lot of fun. And honestly speaking, it's interesting to wear the goggles. It must be a fun project.
Okay, so that's her response. This is everything written out here. I've highlighted in red some of the problems, so you probably can guess what I am going to tell her is her biggest issue. But before we do that, I'm going to shout out My Speaking Score. This is a site that uses the TOEFL Speaking Speech Rater software, which is basically like an AI, artificial intelligence. And it's not the same for Duolingo, but it can help you and me and anybody who's taking the test get a better idea of some of your strengths and weaknesses. So even though it's for the TOEFL, it's a great tool. So I uploaded her response there. She got about a 130 on Duolingo on the conversation or production score, but the low point was her speaking rate. And that's basically how many words she says per minute. And so her speaking rate was slow. So why was it slow? Because she said or way too much. And my advice to her is pretty simple. Repeat the same response again and say or 3 times or less. That's it. So record your voice, repeat the same response again. This time, don't say or just be silent if you have to be silent. And see if you can say that vocal filler or 3 times or less. It's a bad habit, and she just has to get rid of that bad habit, and that should help with her speaking rate over time. So this is something that's not going to be an easy fix. She's not going to do it just once and it's going to be magic. But her speaking rate, her speaking speed is a bit on the slow side, and a big reason for that is because she's saying or way too much. Just to go back to her transcript here, I counted it about 8, 9, 10 times. This is just in the transcript. You know, there's a lot more of these. She probably said or about 20 times. Way too much. Okay, so she's got to fix that issue. Now, one way she can do that is to have a template, a structure, a way of answering this question, a way to start by describing the foreground. After you describe the foreground, talk about the location, and then make inferences about the past, present, or future, and then describe additional details. You might be saying, Josh, what are you talking about? I don't understand. That's what I'm going to talk about in the next video, which I'm going to link to in a minute. But before I do, promo, speakerenglish.com. We have Duolingo English Test speaking plans. If you want a plan of how to practice the speaking every day so you improve, you're guaranteed to improve in 30 days. Guaranteed. You do 1 question a day, takes less than 20 minutes a day to do. Check it out, speakerenglish.com. But like I said, the next video is really important. I'm going to put a link to it here. Click on it. It's about templates, and a template that you can use for any speak about the photo question, and this will help you have less vocal fillers and also be able to respond more confidently on test day. All right, I'll see you there. This is a really important video for Speak About the Photo. It's about templates. I'm going to give you a template that you can use to answer almost any Speak About the Photo question for the Duolingo English test. Let's start by looking at an example of a student who doesn't have a template. He's going to answer a question for this photo here. Looks like this. 20 seconds to prepare. You can't write down any notes. Okay, so he's just got to speak from what comes into his mind. And because he doesn't have a plan, he doesn't have good structure. His structure is not good for this response, and that's one of the grading criteria for the Duolingo English test. It's the one highlighted in the middle, content and structure. So that's going to be a problem for him. Let's listen to his response. He's got other problems, and we'll talk about them, but let's focus first on the template. Here we go.
There is a older instructor. He is kneeling down and get something to show to the children. There are 5 children who are wearing the protective glasses, and they wearing the long sleeve clothing and trousers. On the background, I guess there is a forest full of trees, and there are some parents to also concentrate on looking the instructor what he doing.
Okay, so that's his response. And this is the whole transcript written out, just so you can see it in one response. It's about 60 seconds, so his length was pretty good. I ran it through my speaking score. Now, this site is designed for TOEFL, uses TOEFL Speech Rater, but we can use it for other things as well, like the Duolingo English test, to get a better idea of your speaking strengths and weaknesses. Now, there are a lot of weaknesses, to be honest, for this student. He scored about an 80 for the Duolingo English test. It's a 16 on TOEFL out of 30. But we want to just focus on one thing at a time. And that's what you should do when you practice as well. Even though you might have a lot of issues, you want to focus on one thing at a time. One of the easiest things to focus on is your structure. Before pronunciation, before vocabulary and grammar, the easiest thing is to learn how to answer these questions for this test. He scored 2 out of 100 on sustained speech. That's speaking smoothly. He doesn't speak smoothly. Each word is pronounced with a stop. He keeps stopping. Okay? So how can he fix that, right? That's actually a really hard thing to fix. It takes time. One way to get better at this is to have a structure, to have a template that you can use to answer any of these Speak About the Photo questions. And let's look at that right now. This is going to help him a lot with knowing what to say next and building his confidence. So the first thing is to describe or make inferences about the foreground. The foreground is the first thing you see. Okay, so that's basically where the guy is here. I'll say the guy kneeling down. I'll say the first thing I notice in this image is. You can say that for any question, any Speak About the Photo question. You can use this phrase to start. Start strong. And I'll do it here. The first thing I notice in this image is an older man crouching down on the floor, looking at a couple of objects in his hand. I'm not sure what they are exactly, but he's looking at them very intently. So I guess he's trying to explain to the children what these objects are and how they work. Okay, so that's an example, 2 sentences. Then the next part. Describe or make inferences about the location. So after you explain the first thing you see in the foreground, the kind of front of the picture, then you're going to talk about the location. It looks like this picture was taken. Say that for any question. It looks like this picture was taken in the forest somewhere. There are a bunch of trees without leaves, and the leaves are actually scattered across the floor. So I imagine this is sometime in the fall or winter. The man has his sleeves rolled up, but everyone else is wearing a hoodie or a jacket, so I imagine it's pretty cold. Right? That's the location. I could say another sentence or two, but just to give you an idea here. Okay, so we started with the foreground, talked about the location. Next thing, you're going to talk about the past or present or future. Make inferences, make guesses. What do you think is going on? And you can use this phrase for any of the any of the photos. I'm not entirely certain about this, but I think this is a school trip where some young kids about 7, 8 years old are learning about different organisms and species that live in this forest. I imagine that after this picture was taken, the kids and the entire group would keep walking and move on to another area where they would find a different species, a different artifact, different object to look at and talk about. Okay, so just explaining that. Okay, started with the foreground, talked about the location. Now I'm making guesses about what's going on. Right? And then I can add additional details. You know, if there's time, I'll say, okay, on the right, there is a tree, and I can't see much from the tree, just that it's kind of green and has some bark on it, like all trees do. On the left is a man standing up with a Nike hoodie. It's not really a hoodie, I guess. It's actually more of like a jacket. It's dark blue, and he has a pair of sunglasses on. He doesn't look too happy. In the background, there isn't much to see, just more trees. And in the middle of the picture is another teacher. She's wearing a pink hat and a green sweatshirt with a red necklace around it that looks like it might be holding some keys or a phone. Okay, so additional details, extra information. That's the structure. So you want to focus on fixing one issue at a time. I know this student, had a lot of issues. The easiest thing to start with is a template, knowing the structure of how you should respond to this type of question, speak about the photo. To be honest, this is the biggest issue that I find when I work with students for speak about the photo. They really don't know how to organize their response. This is how you organize it, okay? Foreground, location, inferences, more details, and that's it, all right? So if you like this type of practice, check out speakerenglish.com. We have study plans designed for the Duolingo English Test speaking, read and speak, listen and speak about the photo questions. Every day you answer a question, and every day you see a sample response and transcript and additional activities. It's guaranteed to improve your score in 30 days. Check that out, speakerenglish.com. But if you would like more help with Speak About the Photo, we have another video that I'm going to link to somewhere around here with a student's sample response, and he makes a couple of mistakes that I want to make sure that you avoid making as well on test day. So check that video out, and I'll see you there. Practicing Speak About the Photo questions for the Duolingo English test is really tough, and there are some common mistakes people make that you might not realize you're making until you hear it from somebody else. So there's this one mistake that I hear over and over again that this student that we're going to listen to right now keeps making, and it's really hurting her score. She can really get up to a 120 if she fixes this one issue. So let's look at her example right now and let's talk about it. Here's this question, speak about the photo. This is the photo that she's going to look at and she's going to talk about. And her issue is going to involve language use, her vocabulary and grammar, particularly vocabulary. So I want you to listen to her vocabulary, some grammar as well, but especially her vocabulary, and tell me what's the problem, what's going on. And so let's listen together right now. Here we go.
In this picture, I can see that there is a forest, and there are three men. There are two men and one woman, and there are also many children who is in the forest. And it looks like the one woman and the two men are a teacher, and they are teaching something to the children. And it looks like the one man is sitting in the ground, and he is teaching the children to the some devices, and it looks like it is a practical class. And there are five children who is wearing a glasses. Four children are wearing a green glasses, and one children is wearing a orange glasses. And it looks like they are doing some experiment.
Okay, so that was her response. I'm going to put out the whole transcript here. And I've highlighted pretty much, the issues. And you could see in red, there is, there are, there is, there are, there is, there are, is wearing, are wearing, is wearing. And in the black bold words, men, woman, children, woman, man, woman, children, men, woman, children, man, woman. It's a problem. Too much repetition. I put this audio file into my speaking score. It's for TOEFL speaking, so it's designed for TOEFL speaking, but this artificial intelligence can also be used for Duolingo English tests and for any speaking really. And her biggest issue was her repetitions. She scored a 7 out of 100. She'd probably get about 100 on the Duolingo English test. Most people want to get a 120 or 130 or more, and this is for her production and conversation score. Her repetitions killed her. So what can she do? She kept repeating the same words, children, man, woman, there is, there are, there is, there are, over and over again. What can she do? How can she stop saying the same thing again and again? This is hard to do. You're used to kind of speaking a certain way, and you don't really know, how am I supposed to change my grammar? How am I supposed to change my vocabulary? I'm nervous. I don't know what the picture is going to be about. I don't know what to say in the moment. These are all normal things to think and feel. How do we get over it? Well, you look at an example of others. You look at other people's responses and see some of their vocabulary, some of their grammar, and pick one or two things that you want to include the next time you speak. So it's a process. You look at an example, pick one or two phrases that you like, one or two grammar phrases that you think are helpful, and you use them in your next response. Now, how do you do that? Well, here's speakerenglish.com. I'm going to show you an example for this question, but I'm going to promote Speaker English first because this is exactly what we do, is that you get a question to answer every day. For Duolingo, it's either speak about the photo, read then speak, or listen then speak. And you answer the question, and then you see an example of somebody else doing it. You have a transcript, and you learn from that. Okay, so that's the whole thing. It's guaranteed to improve your score in 30 days. Check it out, speakerenglish.com. But for this question here, I'm just going to show you kind of a couple sentences from one of my answers. So here, I'm going to read it here. A group of young kids are in the forest with two adults. It's actually three adults, but that's okay. I think they are either teachers or parent supervisors, but I can't be sure. So I highlighted, but I can't be sure, because she can use that phrase next time. So she didn't have the word but at all in her speaking. So that's why she kept saying there is, there are, there is, there are, there is, there are, there is, there are. Okay, let's add a conjunction. Maybe but, or and, or. These are conjunctions that she can use to help expand her answer so she doesn't have to keep saying the same grammar over and over again. Okay, so she said, okay, I can use that expression next time I speak. Everyone is looking forward to some kind of expert who is crouched down in front of them. Since everyone is wearing goggles, I guess the objects he is holding are dangerous. Okay, sense. I forgot about that word sense. When I begin a sentence with the word sense, I have to use certain grammar, and I feel comfortable using it. Okay, so I'm going to try to use sense next time. This doesn't have to be you, okay? I'm just showing you how to improve your speaking when you might have trouble with vocabulary and grammar. you see an example, and you take a couple things, take a couple phrases, take a couple grammatical forms, and try to use them the next time you speak. It's hard to see what they are, but my best guess is that's a good phrase. You can use that anywhere. That they're Flintstones that could be rubbed together to start a fire. If I were one of these kids, oh, a conditional, if I were. Again, don't have to do that, but it's another grammar form that you can use to help improve your score from repetition so she doesn't keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Okay, so you just pick 2 or 3 words or phrases that you like and try to include them in your next response. That's it, and you just keep going through that process. As long as you're keeping in your mind, okay, repetitions are an issue. I keep saying the same grammar and vocabulary over and over again. What can I do to fix it? Well, today I'll do these 1 or 2 things. And then tomorrow I'll do 1 or 2 other things. And you just keep doing that, and you keep building and improving. That's how you improve. And so, hope you found that helpful. Another thing I would advise the student is to use a template. And I talked about that in the last video because that'll help her avoid some of the simple grammar that she keeps using. I'll put a link to that video right here about templates. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.